Shalom. Call hello Yahweh Bashem Abishai Bashem Wakakwadash. The honors unto the apostles and the elders. Salutations to all my fellow laborers doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so now more so than ever. To the scattered, hopefully elect, to the Akwaf that are listening and learning. This is your brother Malcolm from the branch of the Great Millstone here in Chicago. And this is Isaiah 49 and 11. And it reads, "Their inward thoughts is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names." The name of this video is, Can the U.S. learn from China's determined response to coronavirus? Now, the U.S. mocked China and showed all of its struggles and its things that was going on over there, which is the curses of the Lord falling upon Moab, which are now falling upon Esau as well. But Esau broadcasted in a very, very negative light. What they didn't understand was this was a very strategic and military type response to the problem. And China came against this virus very swiftly and very sternly, and possibly, well, not possibly, but they did, as a result of their actions, probably stop millions of people from dying in China, because they did so with their martial law type tactics and forced quarantines. Meanwhile, Trump scoffed at it, laughed at it, mocked, as the virus spread throughout America for weeks and doing nothing to stop it. Why? Because of arrogance, because of pride, and they think that they cannot and will not be touched, and now they are. All right. Next problem that you're going to have here in America is second Esdras, because Americans are so spoiled and so entitled, they're not going to self-quarantine. They're going to try and fight that. And it could get very ugly if they start doing forced quarantines, because you're going to see tanks and military and things of that nature on the streets soon enough. So without any further ado, let's listen to how the world is now viewing China on their response. Something you probably will not see in American media.
And you're watching Red Lines. It's been over 2 months since the world first caught wind of the mysterious illness sweeping Wuhan, China. For weeks, outsiders watched as the Chinese government responded to the outbreak of COVID-19, commonly known as a novel strain of coronavirus, swiftly and harshly. Wuhan, a city of 12 million people, was the first to be placed under total lockdown. By the eve of Chinese New Year on January 22nd, all public transportation was closed as officials scrambled to contain the virus. They eventually placed 16 cities and some 46 million people under quarantine. Many in the West seized the opportunity to mock China for employing so-called authoritarian tactics against the virus, blasting out images of entire cities, once filled with life, appearing eerily empty. Others jumped to downplay the threat of the virus in an effort to quell fear and defend China. Even I initially fell for the argument that flu cases kill a substantial amount of people in the U.S. and around the world every year, and therefore coronavirus was nothing to worry about. But I was wrong, and so were others who minimized the illness. We can now confidently declare that China's response was nothing to mock. Rather, it was entirely reasonable considering the scale of the looming crisis. The World Health Organization is now praising the Chinese government's management of the outbreak. Listen to what WHO's Assistant Director General, Dr. Bruce Aylward, had to say when speaking with Chinese media.
Because what I saw was a tremendous sense of responsibility and of duty to protect their families, their communities, and even the world from this disease. It was truly inspiring. I left with such a deep admiration for the people of Wuhan and for Chinese society in general. The real heroes of this response are those people, sitting home in skyscrapers and apartment buildings for weeks on end. And, the few that I did meet, they said, we're playing our role, we're doing our part. And that is so powerful. And the world just owes such a huge debt to the people of Wuhan. And I just wanted the people of Wuhan to know that the world knows that, and we're sharing that story. What you're doing is so important. No, you leave a little bit of your heart in China, and especially in a place like Wuhan at a time like this.
While China appears to have contained the spread of coronavirus within its own borders and officially claims to have seen a drastic slowdown in the rate of infection over the past week, the illness seems to have picked up a passport and is now an international traveler. Dozens of countries now report cases of COVID-19. South Korea, Italy, and Iran have been hit particularly hard. South Korea immediately worked to implement widespread testing, gaining the capacity to screen up to 15,000 people per day. On Monday, Italy's prime minister placed the country under complete lockdown, canceling public events and barring travel except in the case of emergency or for work. Meanwhile, Iran has reported over 6,000 cases. With 10% of its parliament infected, the country's government is virtually paralyzed. Even its vice president and deputy health minister contracted the disease. U.S.-imposed sanctions have drastically inhibited the country's ability to manage the health crisis. This week, Vice President of Iran's Union of Importers of Medical Equipment, Syed Rahman Fallah, told the media, quote, "Several international companies are ready to ship the coronavirus diagnosis kit to Iran, but we cannot pay them." Meanwhile, one of the organizations which lobbied for those sanctions, the America-Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, became an epicenter of the spread of coronavirus in the United States after the group confirmed that at least 5 individuals who attended their annual conference at the beginning of March have tested positive for the virus. Top U.S. officials, including Vice President Mike Pence and over 2/3 of the U.S. Congress, attended the meeting. Yet Washington has made little to no effort to contain the outbreak, as confirmed cases in the United States have now surpassed 1,000. Israel, however, announced that it would be placing all AIPAC attendees under quarantine as they return to the country. Officials eventually announced they will place all foreign travelers under a 14-day quarantine upon their arrival to Israel. Over 100,000 Israelis are currently under quarantine. Top religious and tourist sites in the occupied territories now appear as though they are completely abandoned. While the health crisis in occupied Palestine worsens, the greatest impact of the virus has been economic. As a result of the shutdown, the already restricted travel of Palestinians has become more intensely controlled. People who work and live on different sides of the occupation wall have completely lost their livelihood.
So there it is. This virus has had a devastation on everywhere and on everyone. And it's funny how the media, being owned by Amalek, did not show the 100,000 Israelis on lockdown and, and that they were suffering, et cetera, but they sure did mock and do that with the Chinese. Meanwhile, here in America, they were with their arrogance as if this virus is going to be like, oh no, those Americans, we can't go there. And they let business go on as usual, and almost looks as if they purposely allowed this to spread across the country. All right, especially where they set up these different zones and where they were transporting infected people back and forth around the country when they should have just caught them at the western border at California, directed them straight to a truck and right to some sort of facility or something. But yet they, let these people just move around and about, because they were arrogant, and meanwhile, Trump is on TV talking about safety. This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with a child, and they shall not escape. Because this thing is now communal. It's affecting people who have not traveled, have not been to any of these hot spots. Because all it takes is for a person that has been to one of these areas to come in contact with a few people, and they go about their business, back to their homes, back to their families, back to work, back to their jobs or whatever, to the gym, whatever they do, to the grocery store, and touch on a few knobs and railings in the grocery stores, and then there it is. And another thing that you have to consider too is that this virus, they keep talking about China, but this is a virus that the patent is owned by the American government, or by the CDC, that is. You can look that up. You even had news broadcasters trying to come on and say that, well, they're going to tell you that it has a patent. It does. You know, the guy said that the information is going 800 times faster on social media than it is on the mainstream media. You've already lost. When MSNBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, when basically, let me just call it, when their bullshit gets called by social media and then spread, they've already lost. So those systems will be going down as soon as, because they don't get a lot of viewers anymore. No one trusts the American media anymore. All right, Americans are starting to learn that. All right, and if it ever gets out, because this is a theory, I have no proof to this, but I still believe it, and it looks like it could be, and like this may be the exactly what is about to happen. But China will eventually say that America hit them with this. All right, and there's already rumblings that is what happened. And if any proof or evidence ever comes, that's going to help this scripture right here come to light that much faster. And we're going to close with this. This is Obadiah, the 2nd verse. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. Verse 3. The pride of thine heart have deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith Yahweh. Time is up, Esau. Call halal Yahweh Bashem Abishai Bashem Bakar Kwadash Wa Abba Babal Shalom.